Good evening. First, I'm going to read from Isaiah 42, verse 6. I'm going to be going a little bit into it. And it says, I will keep you and will make you to be a covenant for the people and a light for the Gentiles. I'm just going to pause right there. What I want you to notice is that it says, I will make you to be a covenant for the people. Now, the people is God's people, who are the Jews, the Israelites, okay, people of Israel. And a light for the Gentiles. Gentiles were basically all those who were not Jews. And it says, okay, for a light to the Gentiles, to open the eyes that are blind, to free the captives from prison, and to release from the dungeon those who sit in darkness. Um, what I want you to think about is Paul. Paul said, it's not what goes in a person's mouth that defiles them. It's what comes out of a person's mouth. And Paul actually had a vision, and it was kind of literal. And it was referring to the food that the Gentiles ate, that it wasn't the food that they ate that defiled them. And basically, Paul taught a message that the Gentiles should be accepted also as God's people, and that's part of the reason why Christ came, is for the payment of all man's sins, and thus also for the Gentiles. Now, I'm going to look at an interesting story over in Luke chapter 15, verse 11. And I don't think it's often talked about this way, but let me start reading. Luke chapter 15, verse 11. Then Jesus said, a man had two sons. The younger son said to his father, give me my share of the property. So the father divided the property between the two sons. Then the younger son gathered up all that was his and traveled far away to another country. There he wasted his money in foolish living. After he had spent everything, a time came when there was no food anywhere in the country, and the son was poor and hungry. So he got a job with one of the citizens there, who sent the son to the fields to feed the pigs. The son was so hungry that he wanted to eat the pods the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he realized what he was doing, he thought, all of my father's servants have plenty of food, but I am here almost dying with hunger. I will leave and return to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against God and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son, but let me be like one of your servants. So the son left and went to his father. While the son was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt sorry for his son. So the father ran to him and hugged and kissed him. The son said, Father, I have sinned against God and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Hurry, bring the best clothes and put them on him. Also put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get out our fat calf and kill it so we can have a feast and celebrate. My son was dead, and now he is alive again. He was lost, but now he is found. So they began to celebrate. The older son was in the field, and he came closer to the house. He heard the sound of music and dancing. So he called to one of the servants and asked what all this meant. The servant said, Your brother has come back, and your father killed the fat calf because your brother came home safely. The older son was angry and would not go into the feast. So his father went out and begged him to come in. But the older son said to the father, I have served you like a slave for many years, and have always obeyed your commands. But you never gave me even a young goat to have as a feast with my friends. But your other son, who wasted all your money on prostitutes, comes home, and you kill the fat calf for him. The father said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. We have celebrated. We had to celebrate and be happy, because your brother was dead, but now he is alive. He was lost, but now he is found. Now, what I think is interesting in this story that I think we can see is, I think if we go back to that verse in Isaiah that Jesus came for both the Jews and the Gentiles, I think this verse is a parable that Jesus is trying to give about the two sons. The two sons represent the two groups of people. The chosen ones of God, who followed God's commands and basically were with God always, and who basically had the inheritance of the Father. And the other one, the younger son, is the Gentiles who went out and took their inheritance, spoiled it, went out, paid for prostitutes, lived against God. Um, and I think what's interesting is some of the pastors I've listened to preach on this verse say basically that when a son was to ask for his inheritance, it was basically disowning the father, saying, "Father, it's as if you're dead. Give me my inheritance now because I basically don't care about you and I want to go my own way." If that's the case, this is what the younger son had done to God. He basically said, "God, I don't believe in you. I reject you, and thus I go my own way." Well, still, um, even though the Gentiles did that, the Gentiles were still God's people, and God still loved them. And this is part of the reason why God sent Jesus. Um, His purpose was to use Jesus to bring the Gentiles back to himself. Now, obviously, as we can see here in the depiction, that the older son who followed and stayed with the father, who stayed with God, who followed all of God's commandments, becomes jealous, because here is this wonderful treatment that the Gentiles are receiving, yet they've been rebellious all of their life, and yet still God is pleased with them and happy that they are returning back to him. Um, the Jews did not see this as fair, and this is why the Jews did not so easily accept the Gentiles um, coming, to basically believe in their God, and why they saw them as such a different group of people, and part of the reason why there's still a little bit of a clash today, probably. I think it's interesting to see this parallel, and I think Paul possibly saw this parallel in this verse, and this is possibly what helped Paul come to this conclusion. I'm curious on what you guys think. I was reading that, as you said, if you're curious, I was reading that in the New Century Version, and that was the parable of the lost son. So that is my take on the verse, that the lost son is the Gentiles who basically who left God and came back to God. And obviously we know that the Gentiles came back to God through Jesus Christ. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed, and have a good night.